Tara Elie. Welcome to the Rethinking Education podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me, James. It's great to be here.
It's so nice to reconnect with you after I don't even know. It's one of those situations where I don't want to count the years, how long it has been, but it's been, we've known one another for, let's say, for a good chunk of time.
Nice, nicely done.
Yes. And we recently reconnected, right? And so this is a slightly unusual podcast because it's essentially an exploration. I want to explore like two sets of ideas. So the work that we used to do, are we allowed to mention them by name? We used to work for a well-known behavior management training organization, and I think you worked with them for many years. I think we should say that it was Pivotal Education, and it was a very interesting organization to work with, an amazing team of very talented trainers, and many of whom we're still in touch with, and there was some great work done there. And I personally, I haven't had that much to do with behavior stuff since then. My career has gone in a different direction, so it might be good just to start by checking in and just sort of introducing yourself to our listeners, for anybody who may not have heard of you or who maybe has heard of you but like hasn't seen you for a while. Who are you? What do you do? And what have you been doing in the last sort of few years?
Well, again, it's great to be here. And they were glory days working together, James. All of that touring we call it, traveling the length and breadth of the country, talking about behavior. And actually, my work has continued quite a lot on that vein and really influenced by those days, which I just enjoyed so much. So I think when my behavior work started to change was when I was thinking about how we make great change stick. And I was really became very aware, excellent, very aware of compromised well-being for the adults in their roles. And, just working with some of the best people that you can in teaching, right? It's the best job in the world. So working with amazing people. And I just have such a growing concern for people who miss thriving, or people who have just felt really tired or overwhelmed. And that took me down the route of how do we get that long-lasting change where the adults who work with young people feel that the job is what they dreamed it would be. So they feel alive, they feel challenged, they feel resilient. And that took me down the route of exploring and studying a master's in positive psychology and coaching. And that has informed what I deliver and do now.
Right. Interesting. Thank you. Yeah, it's so lovely to hear you expressing it in such like succinct terms.
Oh, I have my moments.
People often don't talk about behavior in that way, through the lens of human flourishing for staff. Your primary lens there, it sounds like, is our fellow educators are often like you use that phrase, compromised well-being, or sometimes people describe it as like losing your mojo, right? Or just the grind of just like, it's hard. Like being a teacher, like you say, it's the best job in the world. It's also one of the hardest. It really takes it out of you for so many reasons.
It really does. And teachers fundamentally are my people. So whatever I do, sometimes I get introduced to deliver and they say, "Oh, here's Tara, psychologist," and a little bit of me giggles inside. In another world, they might, because I do some lecturing, they might say, "Professor of Guildhall," and again I kind of go, "Who's that?" But if you call me a teacher, I feel very at home. That's where that's sort of a sense of belonging there always.
Yes. And so your background, so did you start out teaching? What was your background in teaching?
So my day to day, it's shifted over time, as they do in roles over decades. But my day to day, secondary drama teacher.
Right.
Yes, absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Teenagers, arts, happy days. I just loved it. I was lucky. I did it in lots of different schools, urban schools, private schools, international schools, city, pupil referral units. I've been able to take that to lots of different spaces. And it's enjoyable wherever you go.
Right. Okay. And so positive psychology, adults feeling like it's the job that they wanted to do when they signed up, and maybe also a job that they can see themselves doing. Like a common refrain that I hear bouncing around staff room walls is like, I don't think I can do this until I'm 70 or 68 or whatever the retiring age is. And there's a lot of issues. There are a lot of ex-teachers, shall we say, in this country. It's huge issues around retention as well as recruitment.
Yeah.
So let's just dive into. So actually, let's quickly zoom out. I do want to ask you all about this, but I want to zoom out. So the reason that we wanted to have this conversation is that there are these, when we reconnected and we started talking about this, we've both sort of been working on quite different sets of ideas. Myself around learner effectiveness, and especially around implementation science and improvement science, which I think has a huge amount to say to questions around behavior and attendance and relationships and so on. And perhaps we'll get into that, but perhaps that's going to be a separate conversation. And your own work, you mentioned you did a master's in, what did you say, positive psychology and
coaching.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And this word has come up a lot in your work, mattering. And this is the other big idea that through our recent conversations, we've sort of thought, yeah, there's something missing here.
Yeah.
In the missing piece of the jigsaw, as it were. We sometimes hear about belonging. We started to hear about belonging more recently, and Ofsted have grabbed a hold of that word. But I'd really like to break open this sort of theory, this theory and this set of ideas around the psychology of mattering. And so that's the sort of the shape of this conversation. But now to zoom back to where we were a minute ago about the compromised well-being, the losing of the mojo. What do you think is going on there?
It's I'll explain a little bit about how I arrived at mattering as my thesis and research. As I knew when I applied for my positive psychology masters, it was in 2020, and I was shaken, like many of us, by George Floyd incident, and then really taken by Patrick Hutchinson's kind of rewriting of the script when he lifted somebody out of those EDL marches in London.
Oh, yeah, that guy.
Yeah, that was the image of hope in quite a very, very desperate time. We were like third lockdown, and I was going down the rabbit hole. The news was depressing. This picture of Patrick came up, and I was like,
yeah,
just felt a real connection and much needed hope. And that's when I thought, I've always wanted to do my next part of study. I wanted it to be in psychology, and but I've also wanted to explore that sort of race ethnicity lens, like how can psychology and positive psychology impact the well-being of very specific groups. So my master thesis was on Black teachers in London, their experiences of mattering. So experiences of mattering for Black teachers in London. So, as one would expect in that area study, it was quite narrow. Once I got into, James, the research and the theory and the literature around this concept mattering, which I'll explain is a psychology construct in two parts. And the construct is about how we can add value and how valued we feel that we are. And it's those two things that will give us a sense of mattering. Yes, I looked at it with a very specific lens. I looked at black teachers. I looked at black teachers in London. However, this construct, it transcends that lens. It is valuable to all of us in education to almost put that equation into most decisions that we make for our adults or for our young people, just the whole community we serve, our families as well. What are we saying through our actions, our policies, our behaviours that are perhaps creating an absence of that, of you add any value to our community, or you are in any way valued by the community, or the things that we do really promote opportunities for you to add value and really promote opportunities for you to feel value. So yes, a deep dive ensued, and that work this term has been the hallmarks of what I'm working on now with schools. So I'm either working with the leaders and saying, I know you've got a great policy, I know you've got a great idea, but what are we doing about the mattering of staff to help them to bring that vision alive for you? That's why I got excited when I heard about your work, because they are bedfellows, friends there.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I can already see lots of connections. So you said there's this two-part construct, right? You said that they partly about adding value,
Yeah.
and partly about feeling valued. Could you please just take us a little further down those two rabbit warrens?
Yeah. So I mean, I think probably if we look at practices or policy things that might say that we don't add value. So particularly with the participants and subjects of my research, the value showed up in sort of three really specific areas. So not just that, but there was representation, one of the themes. There was also racism was a theme. The representation theme, feeling valued for black teachers in London because they were representing their race in the most positive way. And a lot of them, my participants, 9 out of 10 were saying, I didn't have a black teacher in my school, or I am the only black teacher in my school or my department. So that sense of adding value to the profession, adding value to student experiences, and adding value to family experience, representation was big. But it actually had it's a bit of a two-headed beast, that one, because also there was a lot of pressure that comes alongside having to represent. And so Rosenberg, who is one of the sort of original researchers of this, it talks a lot about actually, if you have too much responsibility to add value, then that can create compromised well-being. And I think if you think about teachers on the whole, James, quite a lot of us look at that equation of how to add value or feel valued and go, well, I feel like I'm doing a lot of adding value, but I'm not feeling valued. And if it's too out of whack, if you're doing a lot more of one than the other, then actually it doesn't take you to the place of flourishing and thriving. So you need some sort of careful balance there as well. And yes, for my subjects, racism was the theme where there were issues of micro and macro aggressions that created a sense of not being valued in the profession and not being safe. And psychological safety is a huge part of what helps us to support teachers to take what, for some of us leaders is not a risk. For some of them, it's highly perceived as a risk. So providing that psychological safety is an important and key aspect of allowing and promoting teachers to do things where they can add value.
Yeah. Wow. My goodness. There's so much in this. My head is sort of spinning slightly. I love this idea about the importance of balance, that you need to feel valued, and it as well as and not as well as, but sort of in order to be able to add value in a way that that doesn't make you feel pressured or like just to feel the weight of that so heavily without the support that you might need to carry that weight.
Yeah.
I can really see that. So there's this other word which does the rounds quite a lot these days, belonging. It has come up in conversations increasingly, I would say, in the last sort of 2 or 3 years. I've really seen it. Ofsted have grabbed a hold of it, and now, Ofsted want to see evidence of belonging. I think it's partly a response to the attendance crisis that they think if children and young people and adults for that matter feel like they belong, and belonging surely is at least partly about feeling valued
It's
and
a
feeling that
it's
you
a
add
really
value as well.
important outcome. That would be an outcome of high mattering. So when we create a community of mattering,
Sorry, did you say high mattering?
yeah. So if we've got a clear sense of I feel valued and I'm adding value, so my sense of mattering is really high. If we've got a real good community where that is happening, there is most certainly an outcome of that is belonging. Okay. So there are definitely systems that perhaps we thought was the right thing to do intuitively. I mean, detentions for not attending, that was a tricky one, wasn't it? That was one of those ones that didn't really help to create belonging. We can't really, as our lovely colleague Paul Dix used to say, you can't punish a teenager out of bed. So it would have the adverse effect, wouldn't it? It didn't really. So and we know the hot topic, attendance. Okay, the flip side of that, belonging. I think they are two sides of the same coin, right? When we are sending people out, that says that they don't add value. There are ways in which where it can be additional support, but some students spend so much time out that they are not able to add. Their identity is that they do not add value to their community. We think quite often when we think about praise as well, it's lots of things we can bestow upon a young person, but actually that's us showing them they're valued. Whether the opportunities to promote that young person being able to add value. So I wonder if we could get them to be in charge of who's praised, or them to be in charge of their next moment, or even the smallest thing in a wonderful key stage one classroom of having a scissor monitor who does that role with pride. That actually there are opportunities for us to give responsibility and ensure that we're not just saying well done. It kind of connects with the Carol Dweck work, because she is a positive psychologist too. But when the opportunities for them to give back and to add value, particularly where we're seeing high achievers just living for that moment where they get the A star and aren't really feeling the same dopamine hit on just the A. They've got to we've got to reevaluate and reposition what achievement and belonging and success looks like in our communities.
Yeah. You're so wise. I just feel like there's just wisdom just like dripping out of every sentence that you utter. There's so much in here. It's honestly, my head is spinning. Belonging as an outcome of mattering just hits me like a church bell. Of course, belonging is it's not something that you can chase itself. It's like happiness. It's like it's a consequence of something, and it's also probably something that's quite fleeting. A sense of belonging is something that's going to ebb and flow with different experiences, and sometimes you might not realize that you belong somewhere until after you've left.
Take it for granted. It's the absence of it. Be very aware.
But it seems so obvious, and therefore for school, for Ofsted to have seized on essentially I don't know if you would quite call it a symptom, but like an outcome of something that's much deeper. People are perhaps going to be chasing the wrong goal. Mattering seems to go much deeper. Tell me about some other. You said belonging is an outcome of mattering. Can you talk about some other outcomes?
Well, another outcome would be meaning and purpose. So meaning in life. And that's, as someone who's really driven by supporting teachers, that's important. So if our teachers feel mattering, if they feel that they are valued, so they have an opportunity to have a voice, they have an opportunity to have a positive impact on a young person's learning or on their life or on their progress, if then they feel like they are able to, they're adding value, but also their opinion being heard, which means that they get to add value. And an outcome of this is that they have a high sense of meaning and purpose. High sense of meaning and purpose means less illness, physical illness, actually more well. We're actually more likely to, there's longevity. So we're going to live for longer. We're probably going to work for longer. We were talking about how this is not a career for life anymore, as people say. Well, actually, what if we gave more opportunities and explored the opportunities for that teacher to feel a high sense of mattering, high sense of purpose and meaning for life connected to the job?
Right. Goodness. Yeah. I feel like I've had a blind spot for this word. How did you come across it? You said Rosenberg. Did you what was your entry point to this construct? Where did you first encounter it?
A very good supervisor at university giving me some good guidance when I was wrestling with, I want to explore, I want to understand the well-being, I want to understand optimal functioning for teachers. I want to understand optimal functioning for teachers who have a similar background to me, who will face very specific challenges along the way. Um, and mattering seemed to give the opportunity to look at some problem solving, but also allow my participants to talk about the things that were challenges. And this has in the past been a criticism of positive psychology, that we're just looking for the positive. And I felt that mattering was an opportunity to explore what was the truth about our experiences of teachers, and then how we can mitigate the challenges, and how we can move some of our really positive experiences, just from positive experiences, into something we can really harness for all the positive reasons I've mentioned.
Yeah. Okay, so in the last sort of like let's wrap this up in sort of 10 minutes or so. So let's just zoom in for the last bit on using this lens of mattering. How can this lens help us think differently about behavior and relationships and attendance and so on, these issues in schools? And you could maybe look at that in both senses. So maybe like what low mattering looks like in those contexts, and what high mattering looks like, and how this emphasis on mattering can help to shift the dial.
That's an interesting question. Where should I start for you? I think maybe I should speak of some sort of typical things that where leaders or schools struggle with, that they've come to me with, which have been probably, we've worked out of the experiences of the mattering of staff being quite low. And so, for example, we would love our teachers to feel that they could pick up situations with students themselves, feel like that they could follow up a student's behaviour and that not be high risk and take up too much time, and they would be trusted. So that's the first thing. So that would be quite a typical one. So I get to see it from both sides. I get to see the leader going, "Oh my goodness, some of the things we get called out for, I wish they would just." And I've also seen it from the teacher's perspective, a lot of where who gives me the time to do this? And we're just going round in circles with the same things, and a conversation is not going to cure it, Tara. So And I understand both perspectives. I'm sure you get that, James.
Mm.
The thing is, if I'm a member of staff and I don't feel I understand the reason why my leaders are making the decisions, their decisions, so I haven't been let into it, I haven't felt my voice is on that decision, that policy, that piece of paper, then I don't feel I'm not driven by purpose. There isn't belonging in the paperwork, right? Because it's been done to me. So there's little opportunity to show me that I am valued. And that's going to impact my ability for agency. Now, agency is a great outcome of high mattering, but I don't feel agency if I don't feel like I can see myself in what is happening in terms of policy and expectation and communication with families. So if I can't see myself in any of that, I'm not moving alongside that. I'll do what keeps me safe, because I don't believe that the system that is being purported to be for belonging or improve attendance, that's not going to help me. It doesn't help me in my classroom day to day. One of my head teachers asks her staff every Friday, which some head teachers will find risky, by email, rate your week from 1 to 10, tell me if you think there's anything I need to know. And therefore, all the decisions that are made, they feel are impacted by their opinion. So they know that whatever comes out in the Monday briefing, there's something about their voice in it. They know that improves another outcome, self-esteem, because I know I matter, literally, in the more sort of common, typical common parlour way. Does it matter? Do I matter? Yeah, I do. Because everything that we're talking about in this Monday briefing, I know that she's had her ear on my challenges.
Yeah. Yeah, that stuff really matters, and I can see so the tendrils, that the cross connections with my own work, and especially this idea of slice teams, which we'll maybe get into. Let's do a return fixture where we'll talk about my own work and how this lens of implementation and improvement science can be applied to behavior as well. But just to wrap up on your side of the court, as it were. So you mentioned there about agency being an outcome of mattering. It sounds like it's also a driver of mattering as well. So it sort of like works in both ways. What do you say?
Isn't that great? Like, imagine feeling that. Imagine feeling like, no, I can pick up this student, and I know I can say, James, can you just sit with this group for 5 minutes while I just go and do that? And we're all in this beautiful synergy. And James feels like he's valued to be trusted because he's part of this intervention and we're working together. And that's where you get exciting crackle and conversation and genuine long-lasting change. For me as a teacher, for the students I want to support, for their family. And that's why I always think about it as a mattering community where everyone gets that sense of psychological mattering.
Yeah. And so in terms of, we talked about teachers and colleagues a bit there. Let's just quickly focus on the students. How does mattering play out at the student level in the way that we look at behavior and relationships in schools?
So if I were to say sort of top outcomes, and then I'll talk about one of them. So we said belonging, purpose, self-esteem, meaning. We talked a bit about meaning. We've talked about agency, well-being. I'm just going to stop these last two for students. All of those things apply. But the last two I want to touch on is resilience and engagement. Now, we are talking quite a lot about resilience, aren't we, really, in terms of student resilience? I mean, I would argue, my goodness, they're extremely resilient. Sometimes, James, I'm in these super schools of, I don't know how many students are the nearest 1,000 in a city. And I think to do that commute from one side of the site to another, you're pretty resilient. But resilience improves when we feel a sense of mattering. Because a misunderstanding with resilience is people who can just keep going, and I think that there is an absence of taking into account that moment when you want to give up, or whatever it is, the ugly moment. The moment in my resilience pathway, Tara, will go, I can't do it. This was a shit idea anyway. I didn't even want to. I don't know who made me. And it was going to fail. I mean, that literally, we're all going to die. High drama. And if I was allowed to stop there, you would say I'm not a very resilient person. But in a world where we have psychological safety, psychological mattering, we can get through that bit because we're going to value the ugly bit as well. We're going to give you an opportunity. We're not going to try and stop you from being upset, angry, look, feeling like you're going to give up. We're not only going to sort of put on a pedestal the people who don't have the ugly bit of the resilience journey, because that's really unfair and shaming. But actually, we value it even through the difficult bits. And it's really hard to sit alongside that difficult bit. I find it hard to sit alongside myself in those moments. So that's a bit of resilience connecting to mattering, or as an outcome of mattering. And the final one, I could go on all day, but we're going to be timely. The final one I want to talk about is engagement, because we are concerned about young people's engagement for lots of good reason, right? We're having short bursts in social media. We're trying to teach, hour-long lessons, 30-minute lessons, but we've got to only do things in 15-minute bursts. And I mean, engagement is quite something. We're looking at how do we create an opportunity for young people to experience the flow state, like actually lose themselves and engage in something in a moment where they can use their strengths. And in a high psychological mattering, strengths are acknowledged. We know what people's individual strengths are. They're acknowledged, they're supported, they're welcomed, and therefore if I can bring my strengths to the classroom, well, then I'm much more likely to be engaged. And you see some teachers do it very naturally. They welcome humour, they welcome analytical thinking, because they can see the strengths of individuals. And the teachers who can do that, they're relaxed enough because they feel like they're mattering. And that just is this cyclical, virtuous circle of, actually, I've got the time to nurture the best in you as a student because I know I'm trusted to reach the outcome doing it this way.
Yeah, wow. I mean, those two things in my work on the learner effectiveness side, I often ask this question, like if there was one thing that you could change about your students to make them more effective learners, what would it be? And resilience and engagement are just like, they just come up again and again and again. It's like almost universal. Everybody says that. It's like the kids are not engaged. They're, especially at secondary, they're just like, they are not into it. And they therefore don't feel drive. They don't have self-belief. They don't stick at stuff. And those two things are really, really linked. And of course, mattering, it's like the salience network. Did we talk recently about that seesaw thing? So we've got these three brain networks. You've got the attentional network that focuses you on a task and getting stuff done. There's the default mode network, which is sort of like internal daydreaming and internal chatter, and also making connections and meaning making. And it's that more sort of diffuse mode of thinking when you're doing the dishes and an idea suddenly pops into your head, say. And then there's the salience network. And the way that this was recently explained to me is that the salience network is like the pivot in the middle of a seesaw. And it's like if you care about something, then you have some room for maneuver, and you can therefore really focus on that thing that you care about, or you can daydream about it and make meanings about it and what have you. And if you don't care about something, if something is just presented to you as like, you just have to follow this rule because it's the rule and that's why you need to follow it, or if it's like, you just need to learn this stuff because it's on the test and it's clearly of no importance or relevance or perhaps even interest to you at this point in time. So the seesaw is just flat on the floor, and there's no room for maneuver there. And so, like, caring and feeling cared for, mattering, is another way of thinking about that salience network, right? It's another way of thinking about giving us that pivot on the seesaw that's going to give us some room for maneuver. Love it. So we've talked about some big ideas here. Let's just land as my final question on like practical strategies. If anybody is listening to this or watching it, perhaps they are, you know, blessed with being the senior leader in charge of behavior and relationships, and they're actually, you know, in a position where they could do something about this. Let's have one for the adults and one for the kids. Can you give me some sort of a practical application of mattering? It might be a difficult question to foist upon you, devoid of context, but I'm going to do it anyway.
It can be, but I'm not, because I'm trying to get out of it. But the wonderful thing about having the coaching alongside the psychology qualification is that a lot of what I do is bespoke, because most of the schools have the answers. So if I'm going to say, my first suggestion, get some student voice, get some staff voice, there'll be somebody here going, well, I do. We have our, I don't know, termly, what is it, like some sort of poll or quiz, and we take that in, and we do a Christmas shopping day, and we do all of these things. And I think that it's almost starting so far back. We're going, what do you need? What do you need us to hear? What do you need us to know? What do you think I need to know? So the senior leader, what do I need to know about the school? What do I need to know about your experience? What's important to you? What do we get right? What would you like more of? What if you could do anything? If you could wave a magic wand, what would you change? And think about how you can position it slightly differently. And just look maybe at those two columns, like what are we doing at the moment where students can add value? What am I doing at the moment where we're showing they're valued? I bet you do. I bet most schools do loads where they think about trying to show that they're valued. The opportunity to add value might be only to a few students.
Right, the student council phenomenon.
The student council, and somebody who spends a lot of their time being sent out, they're having the exact opposite, high frequency. You do not add value. So just maybe looking at those two columns as a whole school, as a whole staff, maybe look at it as for an individual's experience. Where are the opportunities for them to add value? Where are they being valued? I would say self-assess as well. When I launch this in training, James, what happens is I can see the sort of calculating going across eyes where people are going, oh, I add value, but I'm not sure I'm valued, or whichever way it's going, there's sort of this metric starts dialing. So I think the first place to start is probably self-assess and then take it broader.
Yeah, I love it. A couple of things occurred to me there, just like one about praise. You mentioned praise earlier, but there's something about praise, like something that my wife is really good at. She's a primary school teacher, is specific praise. So she's just like really good at praising kids, but not in a sort of general, oh, you've done well today, or like, you know, I'm proud of you in some sort of generic way. But it's like, when you did that specific thing, that was amazing. You weren't doing that 2 weeks ago, and now you are, and that's unbelievably cool. And that specific praise, she also like sends that home to parents, and they love it so much.
Yeah,
you can just see how much it cares. And that, so specific praise is the key, I think, rather than sort of just praise as a general thing. And the other one was about when you were talking about asking for feedback and doing staff and student voice. I think a key there is seeing that responded to. You know, I think that people have become a little bit jaded by like sort of like listening exercises that are basically hollow, like the decisions have already been made, and leaders or Ofsted, big listening exercise, or, you know, there are many examples of this. The governments often do it as well. We're here to listen. You're like, you obviously already know what you're doing. You just want to buy yourself some time and, you know, present the illusion of having responded to people. But like, again, being really specific and sort of being able to stand in that Monday morning briefing and say, I had this feedback on Friday and I've really been thinking about it, and we're going to do this as a response.
I love that. Exactly.
Again, it's a bit like just getting down into the specifics, the granular, that people can go, oh yeah, it's like a little penny in the piggy bank, isn't it? It's like clink, like that actually landed.
They connect their action to the purpose of the school. They suddenly go, oh, I'm connected to the wider purpose. Brilliant. And that's what we want for them to do the things that we're trying to embed and implement, is actually feel connected to it. It matters to them. I think a lovely thing that my daughter's school do is they are particularly a current teacher at connecting strengths to learning. And I don't think they even know that they're doing it necessarily. My daughter is 100%, her strength is kindness. And it's not from me. And I'm not just saying it out of bias. You know, genuinely, I see it give her energy. That's where she wants to be. It's kind and helpful. And I love the fact that her teacher now uses it for learning. So she's not anyone's therapy puppy because she's kind. She's actually using it to teach others, which is the highest level of knowledge, as we know, right? So if you
Yeah.
know something, if you're put in a position where you're able to teach it, not just sit beside the person who's struggling a bit. And I'm just like that is getting somebody to improve engagement and improve their own progress in a way that's really creative and connected and bespoke to her strengths.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. I am really looking forward to this return fixture and to sitting in the hot seat as
I'm
you
gonna put
grill
you on the
me
hot
about
seat. Yeah, can't wait.
implementation science and the ways in which that it's not only about mattering, it does mattering, but it also does loads of really practical stuff, which I think could be hugely applicable to improving behavior and relationships in schools. And so it feels like we've hit not one but two rich seams, which we should
Mm.
mine and see how far they run. So thank you very much for sharing your time with me today. How fascinating.
Oh, such a pleasure, and I'm thrilled by the compatibility of our work.
Beautiful. Right, stay on the line. I'm going to press stop